for the Onyx News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Onyx News Podcast, Margie K.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Margie K, and this is Onyx News, and this is a special report this evening outside my normal time period because I've got a special guest tonight. His name is Joseph Buchman, and he is an unaffiliated candidate for U.S. House in Utah's special election coming up. And so this is very important. The election's coming up very soon, and we need to talk about that because, well, you'll see in a minute. Welcome to the program, Joe.
It's great to be here. It's the only campaign that'll be ongoing for another 2 weeks. Deadline's November 21st due to a resignation of the member of the United States House. And so there's about 7 of us running in this race, and I'm running without any party affiliation, so I can bring up the issue we want to talk about tonight.
And what issue would that be?
Protecting whistleblowers who may have illegal non-disclosure agreements about any evidence of humanity's contact with a non-human intelligence. And by that, I mean perhaps artificial intelligence that is mechanical or non-biological, and biologics. And by the way, I've been campaigning on this issue in 3 races for the United States House. I was ahead of my time 15 years ago, 2008. I first raised this issue. But July 26th of this year, man, things took off. David Goresh and 2 other witnesses in front of the House Oversight Committee. What's been testified to is extraordinary. The American public, by and large, I think, is asleep to the issue. But we have people now with impeccable military credentials testifying under the oath with the threat of punishment for perjury before Congress. That's not a light crime. That we have multiple craft, a decades-long, perhaps 7 decades-long attempt at reverse engineering, criminal misappropriation of tax dollars, and the recovery of biological entities that are assumed to be something equivalent to pilots. So I am campaigning to get those NDAs declared null and void. There's some exciting language in the National Defense Authorization Act that will be voted on in December. And while I have no realistic expectations of being elected to the United States House as a result of this campaign, I put my tent peg out consistently for the last 15 years, calling on this issue. And I'm speaking to people, maybe my great-grandchildren will look back on this and go, wow, great-grandpa was way ahead of his time. I don't think it's going to take that long. I think we're looking at maybe another year or 2 at most. And, I have friends like Steve Bassett that think it's going to happen next week or next month or early in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Elizondo is saying sometime in the first half of 2024 pretty publicly now. It's an exciting time to be alive.
It is. And for those of us who have been investigators of this phenomenon for years, we, in 2017, with the release of the Tic Tac videos and the Go Fast videos from the Navy, we were somewhat shocked that was actually allowed to go public, but glad at the same time. And we're hopeful that, of course, there's been a drip of information coming along, but there is some hope that there will be disclosure. Now, I don't know about full disclosure, but they're leaking it slowly. How does a person like you, who is an academic, you have a PhD, you have an MBA, you've been a member of the faculties, how does a person like that get interested in this subject?
And then speak to it. So
Yes.
Somewhere under the core of that is, I don't give a damn what damage this does to my perceived credibility. I for a lifetime, have been speaking as best I can, truth to power. I've been a whistleblower myself on multiple issues from the time I was a relatively young Boy Scout. You can read about that on my webpage as well. But I have consistently, regardless of the potential damage to my own reputation, spoken as best I can, the truth as I see it, for over 40 years. And that includes within scouting. It includes within higher education, where I blew the whistle on fraudulent degree programs and suffered the consequences of that, perhaps in not being able to be hired by other institutions as easily. And I just don't care. I think it's important, at least as the values I learned as a young child, to live a life where you try to make the biggest positive difference you can in this brief flicker of time on Earth. 80 years out of 13 billion, isn't that much. And it's important because I believe it counts for something greater. I don't know what that something greater is. I don't belong to any denominational religions, but I have a sense that there's something more going on here than the logical positivist mind can fully comprehend. And I believe in a life where you just do what's right, no matter the cost. And so on whistleblowing and the UFO issue, I guess I've been interested all my life. I can remember December 1972, looking up at the moon and realizing there were two guys living in a house up there, driving a car around. That was Eugene Cernan and Harrison Jack Schmitt, the last two human beings that we know of anyway, to walk on the moon with Apollo 17. And I just looked up. I would have been 14, 15 years old, and imagined a life where I could travel the stars. And didn't quite happen that way. We haven't even gone to Mars yet. I surely thought that had happened by the 1990s. And then I entered a science fair where I won an award from the Air Force with lasers and holograms. And since I lived in Indiana, just north of Louisville, Kentucky, right across the Ohio River, part of that science fair award was a free trip to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I have a long story about that. I won't get into those details, but it's part of what drives me on this issue. Because it turns out that Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is the home of their STEM program, science, education, math, technology, where they recruit high school students. Now, the last time I looked, it's been a few months, but I expect it's still there. If any of your listeners, you want to go to Google Wright-Pat and the STEM program, they recruit high school students. Linda Moulton Howe and others believe they recruit them to be groomed. And if they perform well, a select few to be brought into the back engineering world. I think that's likely the case. But the last time I looked, and I've captured screen images of it, the mascot that our United States Air Force uses to recruit high school kids into these programs is a little green alien. He's got an antenna. It's
boy.
Bizarre.
Well, that's rather telling. They're hiding it in plain sight.
The guys inside have a sense of humor. And you see some of the patches that come out of Area 51. There's a website, dreamlandresort.com. Mostly, almost entirely, people are interested in the black world of stealth aircraft and whatever the next generation is that share their photographs or other speculation about what's going on out there. And they sometimes post these patches from the guys deep inside that become public. And they all got aliens on them. It's just ridiculous. Or if you haven't seen Bob Bigelow's logo at Bigelow Aerospace in the northwestern corner of Nevada, check that out. It's a classic gray alien.
Yeah, I have the 509th bomber patch.
Yes,
and that's got the bomber and the alien over it, and it says "tastes like chicken" in Latin.
Yes, I've seen that as well. So why am I running for office? I love this issue. I don't care what people think about me for campaigning on it. It gets a lot of odd looks, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot of fun. And I've been challenged on it in debates. It came up in 2008. It came up again in 2017 when I got in 5 debates with then Mayor John Curtis of Provo and the Democrat Kathy Allen and some other people, son of a former United States Senator, Jim Bennett. His dad was Bob Bennett. Anyhow, they ridiculed me about it a little bit, and then that gave me a platform to talk about it. And I got to tell you, no audience ridiculed me about it. we're interested in this subject. And to hear anybody in a campaign even raise it as an issue is just a ton of fun.
Well, how has the media treated you?
So it's been interesting. If you get the foreword to Don Schmidt and Tom Carey's book about Roswell, Case Closed, I wrote that foreword. And it discusses my campaign of 2008 with now Congressman Rob Bishop, and then my campaign in 2017. And I write about how there was a dramatic change between those two campaigns, from ridicule, pretty open. 2008, KSL Radio was running UFO music, and the Salt Lake Tribune sent the reporter to me. By the way, I announced that campaign in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club, thanks to Steve Bassett. He had run the X conference back then, and he invited me out to be on a panel out there. I spoke to the issue as somebody who was not yet, but about to become a candidate in that House race. I had to wait for the Libertarian Party to have its convention in Utah. That happened while I was there. They went ahead and selected me as a nominee, even though this issue was of concern to some of those folks. And then I was able to announce that race there. Well, by 2017, there was almost no ridicule. So what happened in between? And I will cite one primary thing. It was 5 days long. We had 40 witnesses from 10 different countries. We had 6 retired members of the United States Congress, 1 senator, and 5 members of the House, all retired. We staged a congressional hearing room in the main ballroom of the National Press Club, and we held the 2013 Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. I was a part of organizing that. I was the one who got 5 out of the 6 members to participate on that panel. Steve got Carolyn Kilpatrick. I got everybody else. And it was an amazing event. And that was the tipping point for the New York Times, where they've been completely dismissive, by the way, as they were of Goddard and rockets being able to fly, right? Old New York Times published a retraction on that one. They went from being dismissive to actually doing a serious article about that event. During the event, they published one that was kind of ridiculing. They got blowback. And during those 5 days, they actually came out with a second article that gave it the first inklings of serious attention. Now, the article in 2017 with the Tic Tac video, that took it to a whole nother level. Hillary Clinton's comments, John Podesta's comments, that took it to another level, but nothing compared to this hearing on July 26th, where David Koresh and Representative Burchett just blew the doors off, in my opinion. And still, the New York Times hasn't covered that in the way that we all hope it would, or any other major media, really. We're sort of holding our breath for the National Defense Authorization Act, which has language declaring that Congress will declare eminent domain over any non-human technology or evidence. And I think once that is established, that Congress has eminent domain with criminal penalties for not turning it over, I expect that'll be passed in December. The language is pretty locked down. That the Senate, then Senator Warner and the Intelligence Committee would hold hearings. Once that happens, I believe we'll begin to transition into a whole nother world.
That would be so nice. We've been waiting so long for this. I do have to ask the question, have you ever seen a UFO yourself with your own eyes?
And I don't even, we need to change the language. Everybody in this community, I believe UFO is a CIA disinformation term.
Yeah.
In its essence, yes, in essence, it ridicules the issue. So of course I've seen unidentified aerial stuff. We all have, bugs to balls of light and whatever. Have I seen something that I would conclude at a high level of confidence is non-human created technology? I think that's the question that we're asking here. And I have spent 50 nights in my little camper van outside Area 51, stayed up at night looking at those night skies. I've seen a few unusual things, but nothing I would say that, to my knowledge or belief or reasoned conclusion, is clearly non-human created technology. So no, I'm not an experiencer. I'm not a contactee as far as I remember. And I haven't seen any direct evidence. But what I have are a couple of dear friends, one of whom has since passed away. One worked at the Pentagon. One worked at NASA, no longer there. And each of them have told me very clearly that they have these non-disclosure agreements that were they to talk about UFOs, because back then I was asking about UFOs just as you just did, that they would go to a place worse than Leavenworth, that their spouse would lose the health care and pension benefits. And please don't ask me about this issue again. I haven't really done that. I poked my friend at the Pentagon a fair amount after that. Neither of them, as far as I know, ever came close to violating any non-disclosure agreement. And I'd like to think not just because of the onerous penalties that might whirl down on them. Maybe they also conclude somehow it's in our best interest for this not to become a fully public issue. I don't know. I don't care. In my view, if we're not alone in the cosmos and there's somebody on this planet that has proof of that or compelling evidence of that, it's a birthright issue. And what would the benefits be of knowing we're not alone and there is some benign to benevolent intelligence out there, at least watching and apparently interacting from time to time? I'd like to believe it would cause us to unite as humanity. Stop the crazy. I mean, killing children and raping and murdering and destroying such that people are dying in rubble, innocent victims. Imagine how this planet looks to any even slightly more advanced, benign to benevolent intelligence. I don't want my grandchildren living in a world where we have the kind of pollution and violence and threat of extermination. We have 12,000 nuclear bombs pointed at you and me right now. They may go up, but they come back down. They're pointed at the planet. And there's crazy people with shaky hands on their fingers. I would like to believe in a post-disclosure world, that stuff would be dismantled or rendered inoperative if it hasn't been already. I know there's some evidence from Bob Salas and others that maybe that's happened all the way back into the 60s with lenticular craft over our Minuteman missiles and the missileers down there underground suddenly seeing things go offline. I hope that something out there is going to prevent those bombs from going off. But I'm working for it to be our own intelligence and just come into our senses here. And so to campaign on those issues, can you imagine getting in debates with other candidates who speak to the most trivial, stupid issues when this is what's staring us in our faces?
Yeah, it's the biggest story in the history of humanity, actually.
I believe it is.
Yeah, they keep doing things to keep us distracted. Are any other senators or representatives on board with you with this?
Well, there's two parts of that question. Are there people publicly on board? And then are there people in the background that don't want to take the flack for being public on board, who certainly are very interested in the issue? And I can say yes to both of those. In the past 9 months, I've been on Capitol Hill twice. I have been out there meeting with members of Congress, members of the House and Senate both, and speaking to the issue. And I feel respected, if somewhat dismissed. So in 2017, I had those 5 debates and a couple of candidate forums with Mayor Curtis of Provo. He's now Congressman Curtis. I feel respected by his staff. I'll give you one example of that, not on this issue, but I have 2 friends who are in law school in Paris, France. Just young people in their late teens or early 20s. I'm not exactly sure. But I wrote Congressman Curtis's office and said, hey, I want to show these law school students, what can you do to help me impress them? Well, we were met by the chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, badged through to the floor of the United States House. Now, the average tourist doesn't get there, at least not easily. And then through the speaker's office out onto the balcony overlooking the mall a couple of days before the 4th of July this year. So I know I have their attention. I pepper them with this issue and others from time to time. I've never felt dismissed. And then you have Tim Burchett and Representative Luna. Over in the Senate, you have Chuck Schumer saying extraordinary things about the issue, Senator Warner and others. What goes on under the scenes, I don't fully know. But I was invited to attend, and this is a real highlight of my life, a bicameral, bipartisan dinner. Okay, where in DC do you see members of both parties and members of both branches of the legislature, the House and the Senate, getting together? It's at the Library of Congress for a book talk. And so I was on the floor of the Jefferson Building. the Library of Congress as a guest at a table surrounded by representatives and senators from both parties to listen to a book talk about by the author of the Emperor of All Maladies about cutting edge cancer treatment. Absolute highlight of my life. In those conversations informally prior to that dinner and then after, they knew of my interest in this area. And in no case did I feel brushed off or dismissed. You got to imagine these are people just like us. They're nobody particularly special. And if we're not alone in the cosmos, they're beginning to imagine how that might change our political relationships, not only in the United States, but in international relations in ways that could save us a ton of money. If we could just stop all the crazy violence and threats, if we could find a similar energy system to whatever they're using to get here. You know, they're not burning petroleum if they're coming from outside the solar system, right?
No, they're not.
And there's this sense of hope for a better future, and especially among young people that look up to the sky and say that, you know, maybe I'll live in not a post-disclosure world, but how about an open contact world with again, whatever benign to benevolent life is out there. Now, I know that some people have contactee experiences or abduction experiences that they feel are horrifying and very negative. I don't know what to make of that. I don't speak to it. I haven't experienced it. But what I want to say is, if the cosmos is not full of benign to benevolent life, I think I want out. Just, you know, I'm done. What am I going to do about that? We don't have the technology to deal with that, clearly, if they're here. And I don't think they are. I think a lot of the abduction experience, maybe not all of it, but at least I know some of it. And I've spoken to Travis Walton about this, and I know he agrees. Is the same thing that happens, for example, when my cat gets out and gets sprayed by a skunk. You got to give that cat a bath, right? And there's no way in the cat's consciousness it can perceive that what I am doing is in its best interests. Perhaps some of the abduction experiences are like that. And Travis has come around. Initially, he was terrified and thought he was abducted. Now he says, I think they actually saved my life and returned me.
Yes.
That's a change in perspective. It's one I hope is true. I certainly don't have any firsthand knowledge. But if there's life out there that is just waiting for us to stop the crazy, turn off the nukes, stop killing children, make sure every child is fed and nobody starves, how about we do that? And then maybe they would just show up.
You know, I think you have a good take on that. I think you're probably right. Any extraterrestrials taking a look at our planet right now would think we're absolutely nuts. That
must make me an extraterrestrial, because I look at the planet.
Yeah.
And, man, the humans here are nuts. What is it? You know, I hope everybody has seen the Oppenheimer movie, the ending of that movie. Boy, if everybody could see that, maybe it would create a little different orientation. I won't give it all away. But, you know, at the time of the Trinity explosion, we bombed New Mexico. I don't like to call it a test. Those physicists were concerned they might set the whole atmosphere on fire. They weren't sure they wouldn't. They took a huge risk.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, you get this impression that maybe they have set the whole Earth on fire just with a very long, slow-burning fuse that hasn't quite gone off yet. I mean, if those 12,000 nukes go off, it'll be the same as if they did it at Trinity on July 16th, 1945. It just took a few years, you know, and in the global span of the evolution of the cosmos, it's no time at all between that so-called test and poof. Let's stop the poof from happening, please. That's really what I'm running on. Let's get those non-disclosure agreements released if they're illegal. Let's get people testifying to this reality. And let's hope that the consequence of that reality spreading through the consciousness of every human being begins to calm things down. Maybe it won't stop war fully, but surely it's got to diminish it. Surely.
Okay, so how can people vote, and how long do they have to do it?
So if you're in Utah's 2nd Congressional District, fill out your ballot for Joe Buchman. I'm one up from the bottom there. I'm running UAP, unaffiliated. What is the abbreviation? UA something, unaffiliated. You'll find that there, some people have been wondering what it stands for. Vote if you're in the 2nd District. By the way, my campaign sent out 55,000 text messages to cell phones. Yeah, I'm one of those guys now. But I sent them to every voter in the zip codes for the Dugway Proving Ground base housing. Some people call that Area 52. Mm-hmm. Sent it to every surrounding zip code. I sent it to every zip code along the border of Utah and Nevada, and other targeted messages. If you're not in the 2nd District and you can't vote for me, if you'd like to see more messages like this go out, it's www.utahjoe.vote. utahjoe.vote, because Joe puts Utah first. utahjoe.vote. And there's a donate button there. If you want to help spread this message, throw a few dollars at us. Each message costs 5 cents if I buy them in bulk. I'd like to do another round right before ballots are due. The final deadline by mail, Monday, November 20th. In person, the 21st. It's a heck of a campaign. And I'll tell you what, part of this campaign is about raising awareness of Joe Buchman in this issue. And I might just run again next year for another statewide office here in Utah. Just give that out as a little preview.
All right. Everybody who's in the district, get out and vote for Joe. Anything that you can do, any way that we can get this information out and get down to the bottom of and get to the truth will be very helpful. Thank you so much for being on the program. I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here. Don't worry too much about the district. If you know anybody in Utah, share the website, share this video with them, and I'll thank you for it later.
Okay. And send in your donations. All right. Joe Buchman running for U.S. House in the Utah's 2nd District. Get out and vote. This is Margie Kay with this NX News Special Report, and I will see you again on Friday.